10 right now in their millage.
As high as they can go.
Yes, sir. They're capped. And that's a situation where the population is so low, but the revenue generated is so small as well that they have to have all of these different funding sources. So.
Yeah, again, reading that as well, things.
Well, there's a provision specifically for EMS is the way I understood it. Mark can talk about it.
I mean, MSBUs or TUs may be adopted for, and there's a whole list of services in the statute that are specified. I can read them to you real quick. It's fire protection, law enforcement, beach erosion, recreation, water. It's got several aspects of water. Streets, sidewalks, street lighting, garbage and trash, waste and sewage collection, drainage, transportation, indigent health care, mental health, and other essential facilities and services. It's kind of a catch-all. It doesn't have EMS there, but then there's a separate statute that's specific to small counties that authorizes a BU, not a TU,
Right.
for EMS, and it's only for counties that are within a rural area of opportunity, which I think we are. And then there's two others. If you are assessing 10 mills already, not us, or if you already had such an assessment in place as of 2002, not us. But it's only one of those that you needed. And so we could do an EMS BU per that statute. It's a separate statute, only applicable to the smaller rural counties.
Okay.
Do you have to be at 10 mills?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think that'd be a good discussion to have when we come back. Once the whole idea there was to, prop up our EMS, our sheriff's department, fire, in order to get like you said, adequate salaries, but also the equipment they need to do the job they have. So that'll be a good conversation to come back to.
Well, and I like the fact that we're starting it in early February because, it's going to be on us before we know it, and that gives us time to vet it and think about it and really get the pulse of
And approach the cities as well.
Exactly.
Well, and I just talked to Mr. Johnson, but I have a meeting next week with the city of LaBelle, and then him and I set up a meeting that'll occur after that with the fire departments, that I'll be able to bring all of that together with this discussion to bring back before you with what their ideas are as well.
Okay, good.
Thank you. I think we're good there. You got direction on that,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just to, once again, they've put numbers to it. If you just take the sheriff's department's budget, the EMS budget, and the emergency management budget of what's been presented in the file that we have here, we receive in our millage $16.38 million, and just those three entities that I listed alone is 16.4.
That's what I mean.
I mean, so it's amazing how much it costs to run a government and to bring public safety to the people. And then, of course, obviously, to the graph that you've given us here, if you add the East and West Fire MSBUs, now we're at 17.4 million, and we take in 16.3. And so it's just these are numbers that we really have to look at and imagine if you all would have sided with my discussion on going back to 6.5 or 7.2 or 7.4909, which I still think y'all are wrong. We should have done it. We wouldn't have levied 16.38. So
We'd be broke.
yeah, we wouldn't though. We'd find a way to make it out. We just couldn't put the chimes in the clock. So
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Ms. Davis, number 2.
Yes, Shane, this is for the fuel system.
I moved to
I'll second.
option 1.
Motion by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Swindle. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Hemledge.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. This is a follow-up from the January board meeting regarding the code enforcement cases that were taken to the new Hendry County Judge, Darrell Hill. And the results that were written up in the staff report show that there was a positive result of the cases, the findings of the cases. I'd be happy to read the details of it if you'd like me to, but I think that the purpose of this report was to basically report on whether the court approach was a success or not, based on our new processes that code enforcement has been implementing and we continue to improve, and also based on the new judge. And we are also looking at the next court hearing date on February 21st to report on, and from there we'll be having the discussion of whether we want to continue with the county court judge or look into a special magistrate. And so I don't have anything to add to this discussion. I do know that there are, besides the code enforcement officers, there are a few of you that attended the hearings, and unfortunately I was not able to attend. But the feedback that I received from those that did attend, that it seemed it was very good as far as staff's presentation and the judge's responses and the results. So if you have any questions, we're available for those.
Yeah, I attended. I was impressed.
What was the tone of the judge?
Everything for us.
Oh, really? He wanted it cleaned up. He wasn't lenient. He wanted to clean up. Didn't want to hear it. I mean, and just in from my perspective, obviously I wasn't there, but looking at the data that's presented in the write-up, it looks like a resounding success in the progress that was made. Half of them come to compliance before they ever got there, and then only a few were granted hardship cases. And I think that that's phenomenal from my perspective, and I may just be a cheerleader of the process. And so if that's the case, I would love to hear. Commissioner Turner has been very engaged and been very intriguing with the results, and I'd love to hear from his standpoint from what he thinks about this.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
It's Judge Hill, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, I went to Hibbett's and bought a jersey and put his name on the back of it, and I wear it to sleep at night.
Jay, to say Jay Hill on the back.
It's Jay Hill, hashtag the man. But so a couple things. I'll start off really positive. So this staff lady here and this staff gentleman there, in my opinion, represented the county to the utmost abilities. And the thing that I loved the most about it was they were working with our constituents, that they were over here on an issue and the constituent was over here on an issue, and everybody respected everybody. It wasn't this, I'm the big bad human from the county and you're the evil bad doer and you're going to understand you're being brought into compliance, buddy. It was, handshaking, and everybody was on the same page, and I just thought it was an extremely respectful process. And the judge really led on the tone on that, but our staff should be commended, and I think Jennifer has done a great job, along with Ms. Embledge, of getting them all on the same page of we're trying to better the process. The judge clearly, in my opinion, was being direct and firm and giving clear order on where we needed to see the properties going to by the constituent and what they needed to be moving towards. I thought, once again, our staff had their ducks in a row of saying, here's the information, here's what they're at. The judge asked, there was banter back and forth, and I think that we were extremely victorious from a standpoint of percentage of items that went before the judge and ruled in the direction that staff recommended. The easy questions that I had would reference the county attorney will draw up the inspection warrant that will be reviewed and signed by the judge at a later date. Let me ask this. When do we anticipate that? That was on this one specific case where there was a cut order, or I don't know what y'all had a special phrase that you used.
Oh, yeah.
And so how does that work when you follow up with that process?
Well, once the Wanda Reyna, Kendrick County Code Enforcement. Mark has already given me direction in reference to drawing up, and I apologize, I called it a break order when it's actually an inspection warrant to access the property in order to assess it.
Is it also a wellness check, or are they two different things?
With law enforcement, we're going to have them do the wellness check as well.
Should be both.
And because the judge just wanted it drawn up and brought before him, I can have it done this week and they'll add it to the docket, so it will be immediate.
So does that mean, Ms. Rayner, that the judge reviews that paper that is done legally, and then he's able to sign it, and then y'all can take it and go run forward, or do you have to wait until the February 21st or a specific date that he
Well,
has to rehear?
February 21st, the hearing date that we already have scheduled, I can bring it before him.
Okay.
Because he just needs to read it, review it. He's
Okay.
aware of the case. It'll also be attached with the case files for him to just remember what the case is.
Yeah.
And if he approves it, everything's fine, and ducks are in a row.
And nothing will happen before that, though, as it relates to that specific case?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
And then once that's done, I'll get with the Hendry County Sheriff's Department, and we will set up a date.
Okay, so let's stay on this one for a little bit. So I want to paint a picture for y'all. I don't know where this property is. I don't know who owns it, and I don't care. It's irrelevant whether it's in my district, or your district. But I envision someone that probably has a hoarding issue and stuff's grown up, and they are the definition of a blight to their neighbor. And what I'm wanting to see is after this process unfolds, now I'm wanting to see what does compliance actually look like, and how do we make it to where that property is being dealt with from an A to Z perspective of the county is addressing the property and not running up the costs associated to the county underwriting that cleaning occurring. I'm not asking for any questions to be answered right now. I'm just eagerly anticipating how this one unfolds. So I'll leave that there. On the other cases that we had that were involved in that afternoon, did we have hard costs associated with any of those properties where no? So there were no liens that were outstanding against those properties prior to
Those
y'all.
particular cases?
Yes,
No.
ma'am. None. Okay. So there were no times on any of the properties that were heard in front of the judge where county staff and or a vendor that was being hired by the county went out and performed work, and a tab or a bill was created, an invoice was given back to the county, and we had to pay for it.
I would have to look through some of the cases, but overall, I know on mine personally, there was none.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. That's great. That's great. And so then that kind of leads me to my final question as it relates to that specific batch. And I would say what I did witness, what I think is a hole in our process, and I'd love to hear from our county administrator and you all on this. And this is where it absolutely impairs our ability, in my opinion, to set policy, because we can't legally talk to each other about any of this until we're here. So it creates a long, drawn-out conversation. But I wanted to know what y'all thought, because clearly the judge implemented the fine that you all recommended 100% of the time, right?
Correct.
With the exception of a couple hardships. And even then, I thought that he was as stringent as he should be towards the constituent. I thought that it was an overwhelming success. But Ms. Rayner, do you not feel that we should be looking at a daily fine process? And I saw some language in there that, staff is considering an option to expedite compliance by requesting the judge to grant daily fines automatically at the first initial hearing instead of returning to court a second time. What are your thoughts on that? And what do we have to do to create the tool in the toolbox so that you can do that?
Mark, would you like to?
Well, there's a way you can start the process, but you can't actually have a daily fine imposed at a hearing when the compliance is still in the future and the non-compliance is in the future. You can't have you have to have something else, a second event that triggers a further order from the court, because we don't know whether the person's going to comply or not. So the judge says comply, and or else you're going to get hit with a daily fine. He can say that, and it can be on the record, and the landowner can know that, but we don't know whether the owner's going to comply at that point. So we got to wait for the days to pass and the owner to comply or not to comply, and then get back in front of him, at which point he says, you didn't comply, okay, here's the daily fine. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't. You need to have a trigger and you need to have an order that's enforceable, and you don't if the event hasn't happened yet.
See, I disagree with that. I don't see how code enforcement can give you a nasty gram that says you're out of compliance, but yet code enforcement doesn't have the capacity, if policy changes, to create a different letter that says you're out of compliance, and until you come into compliance, the penalty is X. And we haven't rendered any costs associated with it.
So what you're saying, Mark, it'd have to be like a second or a third.
A second.
Yeah, well, and
Just a second.
the one we're talking about, the fifth, is down on 78, right down from me. It's been going on over 2 years.
Over 2 years?
And this here's the third, fourth, or fifth, whatever.
It's the second time in court.
Yeah, second in court, but then several warnings
Uh-huh.
And a citation, yeah.
and citation.
See, and I didn't have any of that history.
Yeah.
And so
got
I think this
back
is kind of a quintessential example of that, because in my opinion, Ms. Reyna, every time you touch it, our dollars and cents associated from a constituency base that we're supposed to bring services to, and we just talked about we only have $16.4 million to bring $17.2 million worth of services in just public safety. That doesn't touch your budget yet. We're not there. So every time we send you out the door to go do that, we're running the cost of business up. And I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to tweak that system.
Right.
Because I hear all the time about when someone goes to close a property. There's a property, I can't think of the address, but it's on Main Street 27. And then there's a property, I brought it up at one of our board meetings, our property that I hate across from McDonald's in LaBelle.
Trading post.
When it closed, they stroked a check to the city of LaBelle for X number of thousands of dollars in liens.
They're still doing it.
How many times did the city of LaBelle repaint that property or mow the grass or deal with the landscaping? The answer is 0 times.
Right.
The city of Clueston did the same thing with the Robinson Pool and Patio building, 0 times. But when it went to closing, I think someone stroked a check for, I'm going to say conservatively $10,000, but I think it was even a greater number than that. And that's all public information and we can look into. And that was because there was a daily fine process that was imposed. And I think that now you get into a situation where you have a bigger stick. And I think it's the proper thing to do other than sending you out. But, these are all things for us to look into. I will say that, and I'm still of the opinion, I'm looking forward to the next court case to see how well it goes. I look forward to the day that we have a special magistrate that just hears that, and you guys are showing us a map that says, we dealt with 38 properties last year, and of the 38, 25 of them are on the market right now, and we think we're going to close on 15 of them, and they're going to be single-family homes on them, and they were blights 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So,
Mark, when you do the daily fines, when do you come to the foreclosure?
Well, you have to have the lien, the order imposed, and that imposing the fine, and then non-compliance with that, creating, these are court orders for fines. These aren't be a judgment. It'd be a court judgment that would be recorded, and then we'd foreclose on the judgment.
But how long do you have to carry on?
Well, until, I don't know, whatever, I think you could do it pretty quickly after it's imposed and not complied with.
Mr. Chair, I remembered one other thing, but go ahead, Ms. Burr.
I was going to say, but understand they only go to court once a month. So that's another 30 days that you have to wait before it go to the judge.
But
It's longer than that.
And Mr. Chair, I'm good with 60, 90, even 180 days because I'm listening to my colleague talk about 730 days that the property's been in disarray.
Correct.
But then if you go before the judge, that's 30 more days, and then 30 more days to do whatever they're going to do.
Well, we're going to start over again.
Well, if I may add to this, though, that the 30 days in between scenario is based on the fact that we have to give notice and due notice to make sure that they have received their certified letter and we have some, proof that they've received it. Otherwise, it gets continued. So if we shorten that 30 days too much, which, maybe we shorten it to 21 days, I'm just saying, but I'm a little concerned that we need to be careful about that. And I know that we've talked about maybe, increasing the frequency of, with the special magistrate and of meetings, hearings. But the due process and the timing of the mailings and making sure that we've received the responses. Otherwise, it's for naught. We're going to court and we're saying we have to continue it. But I just want you to keep that in mind.
I think one of the greater frustrations is this, if you've seen this property, if it's been going 2 years, they've only been to court twice, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Well,
This place is in bad shape. I was there last week myself. Come in and asked about it. If it's been 2 years and only 2 court, something's wrong.
Yeah. And the reason that we're asking for the inspection warrant is because before we did have access to the property, I've even personally spoken to the property owner. Unfortunately, I don't think she understands the full concept of what's going on her property. And then all of a sudden, the gate's been locked and secured. We haven't made any contact with her in months. And, we've gotten reports from neighbors that they see somebody there, but we haven't seen her. We haven't seen her. We haven't seen another individual that lives on the property. And through a neighbor and somebody from one of the local churches, they said that her children were taken away. So we're going in, delicately, but once we can assess the property, then we're going to see if we can reach out to either some churches, some, unmet needs programs or something that can give her some help. So, but we haven't seen her. We haven't seen her in months. Before, we used to see her pretty often. We still see the debris coming in and going out, but we have not seen her, and the gate is locked.
As long as she's there, you can clean it up, make it spit shine. It'll go back exactly the way it was.
We need to try something. So, and she's still paying the courts from the previous. She is making payments.
She's got a dump truck load already out there for them to pick up, and you can't even tell there's nothing missing in her yard. I don't know where she hauls
Yes,
it
sir.
in from.
Mr. Chair, so that was one issue that I think where we're now at least putting a focus on it. It's in the crosshairs to be dealt with. Ms. Rain, I remembered one other thing that came to mind though. You were successful on the fines being implemented and the court costs and all that stuff being cost. So overhead for that day was potentially covered. But one question I had, and I'll just refer to it as Chicken Island. It was like one of the ones that was heard right out of the gate. Do you recall?
One, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That's in compliance. They called me up and sent me an email. They're ready for a reinspection. The chickens are gone, and she'll be in on Friday, so she can make the payments to the court and the code enforcement.
So that was where my red flag was raised. What I wanted to know was, so the judge issues an order, right? And they had to pay. Let's just use a figure of $250, but maybe it's $1,000, whatever that number may be in the future. Okay. Are they now allowed to thumb their nose at the county and hang out with their chickens because they've paid $250, or what happens then?
If they don't, the part of the compliance is not only paying the citation that's been issued or the court fines, but also they have to be in full compliance. So even if they came in and paid the citation and the court fees, if they're not in compliance, they go back to court.
And so then you got to start that process all over again.
Don't have to start it over. We can just go ahead and say that they're not in compliance by the 30 days. We put them on the docket for the following court hearing, and now they've gone against the courts.
And what's county protocol from a day-to-day perspective? How many times will you re-inspect that property just to make sure that they are in compliance, and what's the frequency?
Well, that depending on if we can have access to it. If we can have access, if it's something that we can see from the right-of-way, we can just do it on our regular routine and inspect. We don't have to do special inspections when we're scheduled out there. Now, if it's something like that particular case, I need access. I cannot see it. I have to cross over. There's a gate. But she called me and she said, the gate's open. I can do an inspection, and she'll come in and pay the fines and the court fees. So everything's different case by case. We can't say overall blanket. In this particular one, it's on an island.
Yeah.
I can't see it from the right of way.
Yes, ma'am.
So what happens after she do not come in compliance and it's a court case? What happens then?
Then I take her right back to court. I don't have to send her any letters or anything. I go in front of the judge with the previous case, and I just show him that she's not in compliance within his order.
Who makes the decision what's going to happen next?
Well, after the 30 days, we do a reinspection. So on day 31, if she's not in compliance, then I schedule her for the next court hearing.
So I'm saying, what happens after that with the court?
Well, now she's gone against the judge's orders. So that would be up to his decision.
Be another fine.
Ms. Rainey, you've never been in that situation.
To go back to court?
Yes, ma'am.
No, usually they come into compliance.
Usually, but have you ever gone back to court?
On any of my cases, I didn't have to.
Okay. And how many years have you been going to court?
11?
Okay.
11 years.
Then it's interesting to me that we're seeing the interest that we're experiencing right now. And yet, we still have a situation where, you're 2 years in, and I got through things. But now what I've decided is just as I relate to the county administrator, I'm just going to narrow my focus and say, let's deal with this property and this property, and hopefully code enforcement already has a case opened on it. And many times I think that's what we're going to see. I think of the property that was on Kanawha that Mr. Peter Cigar was just always, and probably still won't ever speak to me again because of it. But, had a Connex, an RV. We went out there, we did some stuff. But those were hard costs that the county ran up. And then in the learning that I've experienced through this, I'm hoping that in, the months to come, we can tweak that process so that doesn't
I
have to
think
occur.
we're on the right track.
Yeah. I think we're in a better place.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I think we're doing
Well, on that case, there was someone did haul off a load the other day, and someone brought another load in.
That's what I mean. And the yard looks the same.
While I was standing there speaking with a gentleman that lives across the street, the children were there last week.
Oh, they were?
They
Okay.
were,
They probably got 'em
but
back.
she is moving. So, Port LaBelle.
Really?
Moving in Swindlesville.
She's moving into the west side of Port LaBelle.
It's it's a difficult situation. We got to find a way to, some of them when you go out, I've had several times I went in, the next day they're coming in, working on getting it straightened out. Then you come into something like this, there's just we got to have some other way to tighten
Straighten
this
it
down.
out. It'd be cheaper
just do.
for her to move than to clean it up.
Well, if she moves, then we're going to have to clean it up.
Whoever buys it's going to have to clean it
Well,
up.
it's right down the road from you.
I know it is.
But but Mr. Chair, there is a situation where
Whoever buys it.
what
Yeah,
you're saying,
no, I
though,
understand that. I get all that, but in the meantime, we need to find a way to make sure they're taking care of it now.
yes, sir. But I think everybody's, if I'm hearing you all correctly, no one has said that they're against the process to where this person has been 2 years. Let's go 4 years where they're thumbing their nose at the county, right?
We're not going to do that no more.
We're not going to do that anymore. And then if they decree after the second time it goes to court,
That's when you put them.
then we start the next layer of the process, which becomes much more aggressive. And now it's time for us to acquire, irregardless of what the cost is, because we've got to deal with this
That'd
issue.
be the daily.
Yeah,
Is
the
that,
daily.
is that their land or they're renting?
She owns
She
it.
owns
She owns the land?
And there's no daily in our toolbox that exists currently. Correct?
There's the right to have daily. It's just
After
it's in a
he's-
court order, though.
He said after
Not
the
being
second
used.
offense.
It's not.
Maybe.
It's not in practice anywhere, is what he's saying.
But it will be.
It's in practice in Lee County.
Well, not in Hendry, though, is what
No,
you're
I had
saying,
a
right?
We have it in
gentleman who
our
had a
code.
pool
It's
over there, and they
allowed.
told him until you get the
It takes
pool
a
out, you'll
court
get a
order.
$150 fine a day unless that pool's removed from your property.
So he got it out, didn't
He
he?
got it out.
So for discussion's sakes, I'm sorry, I want to get this out there. So today, let's fast forward and let's fast forward and say that February the 19th is our next board meeting, and this is just in a hypothetical situation, and that is the 30th day, and this particular case that the judge heard that gives you the lock order to go in there and deal with it. On day 30th, on February 19th, it goes back to court, and that person doesn't show up again, and the judge, they did not come into compliance because y'all you've performed your second inspection. So now what I'm hearing you say, Attorney Lapp, is that the judge would have the ability, as long as we request for the daily fine to be implemented, the judge has the ability to implement that process?
We're talking about the one where he has to order us to give us a warrant for access?
Inspection
Yeah.
warrant.
Yeah,
Let's remove it. Let's remove it. It's hypothetical project
Any
property
case,
X.
any
Any
case
case.
on the second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second time, he can order, when we're back to him again, we say, Judge, you told him to get it cleaned up within 30 days. They didn't do it. Here's the pictures. It's still a mess. He can at that point say, I'm hereby ordering them to clean it up, and I'm now imposing a daily fine from hereafter until they get it cleaned up. He can do
We
that.
have that ability now. We just haven't
Do
been
we have the
used.
authority to say that to the judge?
We can ask for it, and then it's his discretion whether to order it.
Ms. Davis, I would like to make it, and if I need to make it in the form of a motion, I would like to give code enforcement staff the ability to make that request, because what I heard you all do was y'all made that $250 request. Y'all put it up there, and he sided with y'all 100% of the time.
Yes.
And so I would like for you all to understand that you have the support of this board to now move forward with that daily fine process. I don't know if it's 30, 50, $100. I don't care what it is, but y'all arrive at that. and then know that we want to push that issue.
It's all
Do y'all
okay.
disagree?
No, yeah.
That, we've already,
I think we've all said the
agreed
same
on
thing, and we're at the same point. That's where we're at. We need
Okay.
to.
But after speaking with them, then we have to come together and decide how much a daily.
That's going to be up to the judge.
It's already
It's in the
in
code based on the
Code, then.
violation,
There you go.
varying from 100 to 500. Is that right? Or 50 to what? 500?
Yes, I believe so.
well,
Depending on the violation.
they can come up with a number.
It's in the code. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's there.
All we deal with, Mr. Chair, is miscellaneous debris, and there's really just two things that y'all had that I heard being recited time and time again.
Yeah, the
Junk and miscellaneous debris, I think is the phrase.
miscellaneous debris, inoperative vehicles,
Yeah.
skirting,
Yeah.
mold.
Yeah.
They were all our general cases.
Yeah.
And the zoning one for the chickens.
Yeah. And Ms. Rain, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, if somebody's house is a little moldy, I could give two flips. It's when it looks like a junkyard,
Right.
and or it's just the definition of an eyesore, and I'm seeing property values be affected.
Well, what we do is we're not trying to piece. So if I go to your property and I see miscellaneous debris and some high grass, and I just focus on that because that was an initial complaint, but yet you have mold, you don't have address posting, you have an inoperative vehicle in the backyard. We are trained to just do it all at once, whether it's one violation or it's 5 violations, because it's not fair to the constituent as well. I just sent you a letter for inoperative vehicle, and then when I go back to inspect, I didn't catch that you have miscellaneous debris, you have mold on your mold. So now I'm going to turn around because it is a violation. 2 or 3 weeks later, you just complied with miscellaneous debris. Now I'm going to hit you again because there was other stuff. So we are trained to look at the whole property, even if it sounds minor. Grass in the backyard, the front yard's maintained. We don't want to be poking and picking. So we get it all at once, the first shot, so this way they know they have issues that they have to address.
Okay.
I think we got a moving forward action there then. So
Think you're on the right road.
Numerically, if we average, the same caseload a month, that's about 350 or so a year. That's a heck of a chunk, in a community, and hopefully the word will get out, like we've said all along, that we are going to be proactive.
that
so
will
that'd be great.
then that should drop that number.
That's
If they
right.
know, if they know they're gonna get fined, they'll pay,
Yep.
they'll clean it up.
I like it.
Okay, thank y'all very much.
And I'd
Simmons,
say,
you're still up.
No, me. Well, but you're welcome to come back here. Oh. Yes, Commissioners, the next agenda item was continued as well from the last meeting regarding a request for fee waivers. The board
I make a
requests.
motion to approve the fee waiver again.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Turner, second by Commissioner Byrd. Is there any further discussion on this?
are we going to have a presentation from them? I'm absolutely
Mr.
not
Pelletier,
opposed
would
to
you-
a fee waiver, but I do
just
want to
want
make
y'all
sure
to
that it is
tell
a
Phil Pelletier
hardship
no.
case, so that we do not open up a Pandora's box for everyone to come ask for this, and if we don't at least ask them for the hardship piece.
For the record, Phil Pelletier, representing Healing Waters. Carson, I watched the Facebook of y'all because of questions and things, so I appreciate your support. And if I need a kidney, I definitely going to come and see you. So,
I got a little bronze statue of you, Mr. Pelletier, and now I'm gonna go get a jersey and sleep in that one too.
I apologize for bringing this back up to y'all. It should have been handled the first meeting, but Margaret, I know Margaret, I don't trust her.
And you shouldn't.
Margaret wants me to pay, I know that. She told me that way back. But when I asked, yeah, I'm not. I said, I'm going to ask for a fee waiver. He said, I think you should pay. Anyways, but
God bless her.
we, Healing Waters, Mikey, you're looking for a hardship case. We're members of 30 people in our church. And we don't owe anything to anybody in the church. We own the property, we own the building, so I could say we're a healthy church that way. We want to build a church. We're having things in our little church we're using. We have the ladies knit, Gail and them and all, for breast cancer ladies and all. They do shawls and they send it to big churches and they give it to their constituents and all to embrace with. And it's a big touchy thing. We do other outreach programs in there. But we don't have a sanctuary in our church. I can tell you honestly, we don't have money to build a church. We don't. We probably got 1/3 the cost to build a church, and we without getting plans, preliminary site plans, developments to see what it's going to cost. I know that talking to the engineers and working on things that we're going to have a berm built around there. We're going to have to either plant some trees or do different things. So all that cost wasn't part of the plan to start with for the church. I was going to try to get a permit to build a church, and all this is added on. I know Mitch, everybody said he hasn't paid for his church, and he's going to be down the street from us. Ooh. I don't know if Mitch asked for a waiver, but I am for my church. I can tell you that I'm very active in it, and I do a lot of the work there now, and we don't have the money to build a church. I can tell you that right now. We get 1/3 the cost, and as God provides us, we go with it, and He's provided everything we needed so far. So we met as a board, met as a church as a whole one Sunday, and said, God has not let us down yet. So what are we waiting for? So we're going. So I'm doing everything for my church to try to say that the cost of the, and I know the permit, they say you don't get waivers for permits, but the cost of the site development plan, it'll put an extra piece of metal on the roof. It'll bring us our driveway parking lot that we got to have, or anything else is going to add to help us with the cost. So that's why I'm pleading to y'all with. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. Anyway, in the future, we just need to do the same thing, do it case by case.
Well, I would recommend, Darrell, that you have a letter and saying, if you're asking for a hardship, we'd like to have some indication or something from Margaret or the planning department to issue to I look at the church as wholly exempt, and I look at the nonprofits group. Y'all are here, and you're all elected to help serve as well and do the right thing by the churches and the nonprofit groups. And I think if you had a application firm that this is what we request on this, then I would have got that and I would have filled it up, and we wouldn't be, going 2 meetings, 3 meetings, and wasting county time like Carson says.
Well, and look, I absolutely, don't have a problem with, administering or supporting a hardship case. We just want to be sure, at least from my standpoint, because, and as I said earlier, it's just going to open up a Pandora's box of, every nonprofit, and it's not specifically the churches, is going to then want everything, and quite frankly, there's expenses involved with some of those that we just couldn't absorb countywide. Is there any type of protocol for anything they need to provide to show specifically the hardship case?
I'm not aware of any prior board. I know there's no ordinance on it. I don't think there's any prior board vote that gives direction on how to handle these. I mean, if you want to give direction, maybe staff could come up with some guidelines, but we don't have any right now.
So basically, you're just saying you don't owe anybody anything, but you also don't have a lot of money, so you're in hardship.
I can give you a statement saying this is how much we got to build a church. You're going to say you're crazy. What are you trying to do that for?
Right.
I mean, that's where we're going to be.
Right.
So
I've been hearing that all along. Don't let that phase you.
Yeah.
I know, Mitch. We're in the same boat.
I do think that we should have some type of stipulation in the future so that even with the hardship, that it'd be a limited amount. If we was to do a hardship, that we wouldn't exceed a certain amount. So.
Well, and Mr. Pelletier brings up a good point. There needs to be some sort of standardized form and questionnaire and proof of the financial situation for the hardship. I do agree to that.
And do it case by case.
Yes, sir. I'd say so.
And that way you don't have to do a blanket.
We did it for another one. I know this is the second or third hardship that I've voted on in my tenure.
Did, but they had paid fees previous.
Yep, I remember that. Yep.
And it was partly because of that.
Was it in a church in Montura?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
I remember that one.
That's
and then I think there was one way a long time ago as well.
Must have been in.
Have y'all paid any fees or anything yet?
Our church, the church before us that owned that, paid permit fees and things. I don't know what else they did.
For this project you're working on now, you've not paid anything out yet?
No.
And what else is going to come? What else will there be
What
involved?
is the cost of it doing? We got to meet. I know besides my engineering costs, but if I meet with y'all, you have a set fee that you use for this. If I come to you, you're going to say, I ain't going to do anything till you give me $1,500, $1,000, $500.
For you, Phil, for a site development plan?
Oh boy, it's going up. It's going up. Just went
Come
up.
up to the mic, please. Got to be on record.
But
We have a flat fee of $1,000 for a site development plan. And that was lowered from, I think, close to
2,500.
something, at least that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've lowered the fees tremendously
Yeah.
since
But there's
I've
going to
been-
be others. Then there's going to be permits and stuff like that, right? Are y'all?
Yes,
Are you
we
going to be able to pay
can't-
those?
Yeah, they can't waive the permit fees.
Building
but-
permits.
You
That's
guys don't
correct.
have that authority.
Right. So I mean, you're going to be able to pay those and
Well,
any
yeah,
other
yeah.
fees.
And it's, you know, the $1,000, I'm okay with you all waiving it. What I'm concerned about is the precedence, because, you know, it's really hard to prove a hardship in some situations. And, you know, so I think that it's going to be tough, and I know it's going to be case by case, but, you know, we get to a point where nonprofits, churches, and so on, you know, they require other services, and so there's got to be a limit on waiving fees. This $1,000, you know, also I'm going to tell you is that planning and zoning, the division in the department I'm in charge of, we're not supposed to be a self-sustaining, you know, pay for ourselves, even though they like to think I am. But we're, you know, it's really the rest of the county that's paying us to review plans for folks that received a fee waiver. So it's just it's not bad. It's just that's the way, you know, way you have to understand that there's, you know, somebody else is really paying us to do this, do this work. But the fee is so much lower that it's not. I'm not going to say it's not a big deal, but it just really isn't a big strain on our overall budget.
The way I look at it is, we'll be paying for another permit fee as well, because we won't have the money to finish what we want to finish, but that's not my choice right now. So, you know, there's no telling what's going to happen where, but if I was to say, whatever the permit is, we'll be paying it again because we won't have enough money to finish the church, so you'll get another permit cost without going out to do anything. I know that in a year's time. Hopefully, you know, good Lord provided, we won't have that.
Right, and
Yeah.
you're right. You will, besides the, you know, waiving the $1,000 is going to be a drop in the bucket with the dollars you're going to be spending on going forward with any permits. So I understand that. So $1,000, you know, it'll help you, but not going to be the answer.
Okay,
I move for question.
Any further discussion?
none.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Backing up.
Okay.
You don't mind if I leave? I got to get to the steer show.
No, you got to stay here through the whole meeting.
How many do they have in LaBelle?
All right, well.
How many
yeah.
steers do y'all have in LaBelle?
13.
That's still
and
good.
77 hogs. 77.
Wow.
That's more than I think
Steers.
that's more than what we have here.
Steers?
Steers
Okay.
and hogs.
We used to have 3 every year.
Yeah, I remember.
Ms.
Okay,
Emily?
yes. Commissioners, this next agenda item is simply informational, but we thought it was important that we provide you with an update on some of the projects that planning and zoning have been working on, which is primarily myself and Myra. Oh, I'm sorry, and Shane, and Mark, and and Jennifer. No, go. But anyway, one of the projects is Wheeler Estates Land Use Study. That is a study that's being funded by a DEO grant. We've had 5 community outreach meetings, and they have been some of the best meetings, community outreach meetings I've had in my career as a planner. Very successful. Usually at this point in time, with the 5th meeting, you have maybe a handful of folks showing up, but we've had a room full. And thank you to Commissioner Wills, who's attended them and given everybody his phone number and promised that, you know, you gave Daryl's phone number. Okay. So, but the result of this study will be amendments to the comprehensive plan land use map. Will be redesignating Wheeler Estates to its own future land use category based on the input from the community. We will have specific, I'll say, criteria and guidelines in the comprehensive plan. And then we will be amending the land development code to create a new section that's specific to Wheeler Estates, including which was one of the main reasons why we had this study, was to allow a certain amount of farm animals. And when we had that discussion earlier last year or the year before about the number of farm animals that are appropriate in rural residential properties, we had the hope or the intent here was that we would use the result of Wheeler Estates efforts to be able to look at applying that in the other rural residential zoning districts so that we could have a better control over the amount of household farm animals on residential properties. So when you see some of these regulations, I will be expanding on or wanting you to think about how we may be able to transfer some of those other areas in the county that would be appropriate for them. The other project that we're working on, and thank you, Shane, he and I drove up to Orlando for a meeting yesterday afternoon and drove back, and is the State Road 80 Access Management study that the FDOT is paying consultants to perform the work, and this has been going on for quite a while. We've been having weekly conference calls and so on, but the effort started off with going through existing conditions and then resulting in some recommended alternative access management plans for the segment of State Road 80 that starts at the Lee County line to Cowboy Way. And we're at the point right now where they're going to be finalizing, I'll say, the study, the write-up of the study, so that it's very clear what the purpose is. And the purpose primarily here is safety and to ensure that the level of service of State Road 80 remains at the current level. I think it's B now, as far as functioning. That we would be able to create, I'll say, certain interconnections and potentially frontage roads for the local traffic to minimize the interaction with the drive-through traffic. And these concepts will then be able to be transferred to the rest of State Road 80 and US 27. And my hope is that in 20 and 21, we'll be focusing on the section of US 27 that's by the Everglades Airport, because it's going to be really important that we establish a road network there that will accommodate local traffic as well as the drive-through traffic, partly because it's a major stretch of the logistics, freight logistics system. But with the results of this study, we will be looking to amend the Land Development Code to further be able to implement certain requirements on future development on State Road 80 and US 27. And that would avoid the small commercial developments that are, I guess, really not furthering the State Road 80 corridor overlay, the purpose of that was adopted in 2003, and that overlay was intended to establish a gateway to our community so that not just looked good, but that it was a well-planned development in that along that corridor. In addition to that, we have a few comprehensive plan amendments that will be county initiated. One of them that I'll highlight is the affordable housing bonus density, with one of our priorities being providing for affordable housing. In our comprehensive plan, we have maximum densities that are permitted in each land use category. And I'll be honest with you, in most cases, the densities aren't enough to really support a high density affordable housing project, because we'll just use as a condominium or an apartment complex, you need at least 12 units per acre to make it economically feasible. Well, our comprehensive plan doesn't allow those densities in most areas, or any areas actually. But anyway, so that was the reason why we've added this to our priority list to pursue, so that we'll to peel back more of the obstacles to providing for affordable housing. Then we have a list of the land development code amendments that we're working on. One of the, I guess probably the one that's going to create the most interest from the community is the residential design standards. And the whole purpose of that was to address the modular home issues that not only have been brought up recently, but the fact that we can't, according to case law, we're not allowed to discriminate between modular, and I'm not talking about mobile homes, I'm talking about modular. We can't discriminate between modular homes and site-built homes. So in order to address concerns with the community and to create a level playing field for modulars and site-built homes in certain residential districts, which we're looking at the RG1, which is it's residential 1 acre, RG2 is half acres, and RG3 is a third acre residential districts, plus then in Wheeler Estates, because that's what they would want as well, these design requirements would be required. There's minimum design requirements, and then there's certain options to choose from. I will be presenting that at the next meeting in either a workshop or presentation. I need to talk to you a little bit more about that, but and we will be sending out the draft to the contractors, even though some of them are already aware of what we've been working on. And but next meeting we'll be presenting it and getting your feedback on them. And we'll also have the costs associated with these design requirements that would be on the books or that we're proposing. And some of them really are just standard architectural designs that are on most homes anyway. We're not getting too crazy on this because we understand we have to keep the costs down. But we also need to ensure that folks can be ensured that the values of their homes are kept, in what their investment was. And that's what some of the constituents have had questions about when it comes to having a modular home next to a site-built home. So anyway, that's again something we'll be bringing to you. I'm not going to go through the rest of them. Do you have any questions on the rest of the items I have listed here?
Can you go over this buffer deal?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That became an issue the past 6 months with industrial developments, specifically on Industrial Loop Road, where our buffer requirements between the industrial uses and industrially zoned properties really were more than what we needed. So what we're proposing is that you would have to have a street buffer minimum, 4 trees, in the frontage, and then you wouldn't have to have any buffers between each of the industrial properties. So the sides and the rear of the properties in Industrial Loop, for example, wouldn't have to have the buffers because but if you are a light industrial use and you don't like the heavy industrial that's next to you, then you're going to want to put some buffers in yourself, but that's on you. It's not going to be a county requirement and an additional cost for them.
What about the buffers that we don't want people to see? Okay,
The buffers?
You know what I'm talking about. The buffers that put in that we don't want people to see what's behind them.
Yes,
Like,
what about them?
Well, like the one on 80, where
Yes.
they put up oak trees, which shouldn't be used for a buffer, and you can see through the oak trees. Then when they grow, you can see under the oak trees.
Right.
So did we correct all that stuff?
Well, we won't have another buffer like that, and we wouldn't have another project like that
I hope not.
because the State Road 80 overlay requires outdoor storage to be in the rear of the
Wouldn't want
property.
nobody to see that on any road.
Yes, I agree. You don't have to be concerned about that situation occurring again. And landscape buffers, we're looking to be, we already have on the books, some landscape requirements or the ability to approve alternatives so that we don't have something that's doesn't make sense.
Then on 80, we talked about this, was it 3 years ago or 4 years ago on State Road 80? And so would we ever get any kind of funding to correct those driveways on 80 where there's a driveway like ever so many feet for side roads?
That's what the State Road 80 Access Management Study is.
Yeah, but will we ever get any funding? Will they put the roads in? Or how will that?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Well,
Shane can explain to you how it works, but we're going to, the results of the results of the study will get the preferred alternatives in our long-term transportation plan with let me throw out another acronym, with the HRTPO, which is the Heartland Region. Well, you do, sir, because you're on the board. But anyway, and then it would be incorporated into the cycles of funding and PD&Es. So yes, that's part of the plan. But it's going to take quite a while to make it happen. In the meantime, when new development comes in,
We're going forward. Right.
we are going to be requiring them to provide interconnections with the adjacent properties. And I'm going to be looking to, we've talked about this a lot, about limiting the properties that are rezoning to C3, which is the high-intensity commercial. For example, on those, what we call the shotgun properties on State Road 80 on the west side, they're small properties. It's really not appropriate to have a 1 acre parcel that's high-intensity commercial.
But isn't the horse already out the barn?
Well, no, because we can put the door back on the barn. Because
there is not one commissioner here that if there is an entity on 1 acre that has been zoned C3 already, they're employing people, and they come and petition us and say, county code enforcement or planning director or whoever, God has said he's going to shut this business down.
Oh, we're not going to do that. That's
That's
not
what I heard you say.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
All right, what'd you say?
We're not going to. Those folks are grandfathered in.
Okay.
We're not taking away. We're just going to be smarter in the future.
So we will not allow for C3 to occur on a 1 acre plot moving forward.
We're going to recommend that. That's going to be up to you all to approve it, but we would be looking at requiring a minimum of possibly 5 acres so that we could start getting some good interconnections and then eventually having the connections in the future based on the access management plan that'll come out of this, where the connections to State Road 80 would occur. So you're limiting those individual direct accesses to State Road 80. So it's a long-term plan, but we have to start somewhere.
And do we have the ability to, I think, ask a little bit of what Commissioner Harris was saying? As we look at that plan, look at the development thereof, do we have the ability to petition District 1 DOT and say, hey, we'd like for you to help us with underwriting how we want this access management plan to look and ultimately that infrastructure to be developed?
They're doing that right now.
Okay, so yes.
They're
is the
paying,
answer.
yes, they're
Okay.
paying for this study.
Okay.
It's been great. It's just taken a lot longer than we thought.
What about after the study?
After the study, well, that's what I was after the study is when we would put that on the LRTP with the HRTPO.
DTT time.
And it would roll into the funding and the PD&Es and that whole process and it's an SIS segment. So, and I'm not going to explain any of that. That's up to you. So anyway, it's
I'm disgusted that I know what every one of those acronyms mean.
Yeah. So yes, I mean,
I do. It's unfortunate.
It's not just going to drop after the study's done.
No.
But we do have, but I will say, I will caution us that we have to keep our finger on the pulse, because if not, and I think you would agree with this, it's a fact. By the way, I just read this is the longest tenure we've had without, by definition, a recession. So this is our boom has been really long, is what I'm saying, and it's going to happen. The economy's going to retract again, and so when that occurs and dollars aren't flowing like they are, we're going to be one of the first areas that District 1 pulls those resources back from, and that's where it's important that we are working with you all to make sure that those follow-ups are occurring as it relates to development of the infrastructure moving
Well,
forward.
right now, we do have a lot of, I'll say, support from FDOT in different aspects than we've had before, beyond what, Shane's engineering nerdy stuff is. We've got some good planning going on.
Engineer of the year.
Anyway, sorry. I better leave the podium.
You got the engineer of the
Do
year.
you have any other questions for me?
With all that planning going on,
Yes.
you and Shane both kind of giving me dirty looks. With all that planning going on, how long before we get a planning to get into Wheeler Estates from Hendry County?
You mean a road connection to State Road 80?
Yep.
Is that what you were
That's
saying?
what I said. Yeah, how to get in there from Hendry County.
Okay.
Let me back up. How long before we get road access from Hendry County to Wheeler
Sir,
Estates?
now it's your turn.
See, I didn't ask for no money on the church, but I'm asking y'all for some money now. These folks need to be hooked to the county they live in. So how long before we do that?
It's going to be a while. I went through and looked at the easements we do have. We're still missing probably 6 easements.
Is there nothing we can do with Lee County on the easements they have? None of those easements will work?
No. Lee County doesn't have any easements. Now, Lehigh Acres Municipal Service Improvement District, that may be what you're referring
That's
to.
what I'm referring to.
That's a drainage canal. I have not met with their drainage engineer, but
That's
that
a
would require
big bank there.
that would require the road to be jogged over and go down and up. And ideally, you'd want it to go north toward the monkey farm because we've already have easements in place there for a 60-foot wide road right away.
Mr. Chair.
I got to be honest with you. I really, it would be ideal, but they've lived out there all these years, paid taxes all these years, haven't got anything for it. If they want a deputy to get there, they basically got to wait for Lee County to get there. EMS, they got to wait for Lee County to get there. It's time the Henry County gets there.
Well,
So
Henry County BOCC is going to have to fund the road because
y'all
there's
get
not
ready because
enough-
I'm asking y'all for money.
There's not enough money in the transportation budget to build a road, and it's not going to be DOT. It's not going to meet DOT qualifications for SCOP or SCRAP for like a farm to market road. The MSBU would have to do it,
Give
and
us-
the MSBU fund could fund it, but
I'd
there's
like to
not
see
enough money in the
GIS map.
MSBU.
I'd like to see a
Generator.
GIS picture that shows what you're talking about and the easements that are associated with that.
You can do that. We've got that already.
He's got it.
Now, we've been talking about this for a while. I just figured since I didn't ask for no money on the church, I'd ask for money here.
You're not asking for
I'm gonna drop a big bucket there, so I'm just asking for a road.
Big one.
Just a road.
the first road is one on the
Thank you.
county line.
Mr. Lapp,
New bridge going
Nothing,
across.
Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Anyone in the public wish to address the board? No one. Oh, sorry.
No, there's no need.
That's not him, his name
It's
is
not.
Alan Davis.
It's not tonight.
Oh, that's not tonight. Okay. Business by district then. Mr. Swindle.
Ms. Davis, you passed out a handout before. That was covered under consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
For the vehicles? Okay. Just to be clear, we didn't want to leave that on the table for you. I've been getting a small handful of calls lately about the new road, the LaBelle bypass, and when it's going to be open. Apparently, it's got to be,
Red lights.
and what any kind of time frame.
I don't have a time frame other than just today. Johnson Engineering resubmitted back again a response to DOT, but we've got a letter in November that said that traffic signals are approved to go in per the approved plans, but we don't have the approved plans. Once the signals are approved, then we're going to have a change order with Ajax because the plans that they bid on, the poles are going to be different, it's a different configuration. It's going from concrete poles to mast arms, and there's a lead time on that.
Is
So
it
it's probably gonna
monotube
be-
or cantilever? Is it a?
It's going to be cantilevered, yeah. It'd be metal. And DOT's response was, we're paying for it. So this is what.
We want cantilevers, you all. That'll look much
So
better.
it's going to look nice. There's going to be a lead time, but as county engineer, I'm saying do not open the road because we argued to get those signals put in continuous flashing mode that says there's a life safety issue. So if someone gets hits, then that's a pending lawsuit to the county.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah. DOT.
Commissioner, where does so that's the road that's, I don't know if it's this side or that side of Walmart.
Yeah.
So
west
the
side.
west side.
It's west of Walmart,
Right.
and it goes to 80.
Goes from 80
I mean, excuse me, but it goes back to 29.
Right, and then it connects to an existing Helms Road, which takes you south of the airport through the southern blocks of Port LaBelle.
road.
So you could use Cedarwood, Collinswood, Birchwood.
So it's
Forward
gonna end up in Port LaBelle. It's not gonna end up back to 80.
Well,
Eventually, it'll be back to
basically,
80. You could.
Yeah,
eventually.
that road's gonna be a bypass for the four-way and all the mess that the roundabouts are planning there. So they're gonna be going down there. I'm still not happy with the roundabouts.
He hates
I'm
around.
not in Europe.
Love him, man.
They're good.
But the fact is, that road, that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna take you from 29 to 80 and from 80 to 29. I mean, you could access Port LaBelle, but that's not what everyone's gonna do.
Y'all think I know we ain't changing it now, but I still say it's crazy. I think it's the most ludicrous
To
thing.
do that, you
It's going to
mean?
be a nice
Huh?
road.
To do that?
Yeah,
Talking about Helms Road?
It's gonna go all the way
I'm so
around.
confused.
Well, when you build out Port LaBelle, Commissioner, you're going to have to find a place for those cars to go. It's just going to be like Lehigh and Fort Myers or Cape Coral. There's not enough roads to get it. You're building a network, and that's when Port LaBelle is getting homes. You're going to be able to get out of Port LaBelle, other than Cowboy Way or 80. And there's a lot of traffic on Cowboy Way, and it's going to alleviate traffic in I think it's 4 miles of downtown LaBelle, just circulating around that can go out. There's a lot of people that want to use that road.
Toward Cowboy Way.
It's gonna be mostly locals. It won't be mostly locals.
Right.
Well, you're gonna get Felden and Markley going to Walmart down Helms Road. Everyone.
But the multi-use pass done, the sidewalks
Careful
done,
what
the
you
4
ask
lanes are
for.
paved. It's
That's
not
right.
striped yet, but
Courthouse
it'll be
is packed
striped
right
when the
now.
signals go in.
40
reality
wheels
is-
packed
So
right
not
now.
no time soon.
No time soon.
Reality
not
is probably
Yeah.
a year. Is that
You start
reality?
moving
Really?
people out of town.
Really?
It could reality. It could be a year. It could be less. It just depends on the lead time of when DOT gets done with the plans, and then what's the lead time going to be for those mast arms.
It could
Wow.
be forever.
No, I was gonna have the
Lead
same
time was
question for this one.
24 weeks or 22 weeks
On
for
the
mast arms.
Yeah.
Good grief.
But there may be a way you can put an incentive plan in, like, hey, if you can get them here sooner, we pay X more. I don't know. We have to see.
What do you mean X more?
22.
X is in you pay more
Dollars
money if you
more.
want them here sooner.
Don't do that.
But it'll probably be 10%.
Last board meeting, we had a great presentation, and I'm sorry I can't remember the gentleman's name from the Florida Highway Patrol, the investigator,
Read.
Reed. Was there been any improvements, anything to those? There was 2 specific roads that were.
Case and Evans.
Yes, sir. That was specifically critical. Have y'all gone out and done anything? Evaluated? Have
We got
not.
a meeting with Garden Bus Stops Wednesday with
But
Kevin
Shane,
McCarthy.
you're aware of what we're talking about, right?
Talking about Case and Evans with the
No, sir. I mean the discussion that ensued at our
the
board
bus.
meeting.
He,
With the buses.
was he there?
No.
I wasn't at the board meeting.
Oh,
That was
okay.
Case and Evans.
Okay.
It
Yes,
was
it was
the bus
Case and
stop.
Evans.
It was
It
the
was
school
the
bus
stop.
stops.
Well, I know. I spoke to former Commissioner McCarthy that's in charge of the bus transportation. He said he's meeting with you guys soon, maybe as soon as
Alright.
tomorrow. And he said they've already adjusted the bus stops to make door to door, so no student should be walking up and down that road. But I think that was only one layer of the issues there.
Yeah, those
That it was
pedestrians.
some.
Narrow.
Yeah,
So
there were
what
some
was
issues.
proposed, if I remember Chairman Wills correctly, was we could potentially put a couple culverts and make a platform with some shell rock or dirt on a ditch road. Potentially, that's an option that
Right.
could be discussed. I'm not saying you're going to do that. I'm just saying that was something that he threw out there and it made sense.
Well,
If
that's
it's a
gonna come-
possibility.
It's a possibility, but it's going to come back to what Kevin McCarthy says about where those bus stops are.
Yeah.
If
That's
they
a
going
long road.
driveway
Yeah,
to
and if
driveway.
he's already made the adjustments, those were just for bus stops. If they've already made the adjustments, then that takes care of that.
Well, he
The
wasn't.
next issue was going to be pedestrians, and he can't control that. That
Yeah.
was a
Right.
different issue
That's right.
altogether.
But he
And
wasn't
then-
only concerned about the bus stop. He's concerned when they make that turn, that fall over into the.
And apparently there were some speed issues, maybe some speed bumps or some
Well, that-
whatever. But there were some serious issues that need to be addressed for those folks and those residents.
Homes can be done if the commissioner of the district wants to do it, and you get a certain percentage of the
I want to
residents
ask.
want it.
And the chairman also brought up the fact that those are many times just launching ramps. So
To
you
get
know,
Yeah.
sued.
yeah.
It's already. Somebody get
Okay,
killed.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And I noticed in the consent agenda there were some modifications on some FEMA paperwork. Are we any closer to being able to realize anything?
We're getting what they call PWs, project worksheets. They're sending them every week as far as the next step in their process, and we're answering questions and sending it back. But to date, we have not received any.
That was a long
reimbursement.
discussion, Mr. Chair, that we had at the last meeting I attended in Tallahassee, where we're trying to move to a statewide protocol, and the state's wanting to engage that because I think it was Orange County, but somebody submitted FEMA documents. There was literally like 43,000 pages, to their what they needed for their reimbursement, and like nobody's going to review that. So what they're saying is it's just too tedious of a process. So we want to try to make it uniform throughout. So that is something that we'll probably hear about when we're in legislative process.
I'm still estimating 10 years before we see a dime. And just for the record, 2 down.
And so 10 years, and
no
so you're
storm.
so 2029 you're saying, or 2028,
Maybe it'll be that long before we see
for
a
Hurricane
dime.
Irma,
That's correct.
knowing that there's still going to be a storm.
Correct.
It's inevitable.
Correct.
Well, I think St. Johns County. There's other counties that'll prove it. You're paying out because we're 14 years past Wilma and they haven't received.
That's
a dollar.
right. That's exactly right.
18 months.
And we're sitting with a depleted emergency fund, and I'm telling you, it's scary to me that we're a weekend storm away from having to shut down services. So, anyway, that's all I have. Thank you all. Hope you all look forward to we have a festival season with Swamp Cabbage coming up, and the Henry County Fair. So look forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you. Ms. Bird?
Well, Ms. Monroe and Mr. Davidson is here from the telehealth, but I don't want them to speak. I want Ms. Johnson just to kind of turn around a little bit there. That's who I want to introduce them to you. So I just want at the end that you can have time to speak to them. I did get a couple of cards for you to make sure that you all chat before you go. Other than that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Anyway, on Evan and Case, I talked to Kevin and Sheriff Witten, and they are giving tickets on those 2 roads. And that's a road you don't want to walk on, or you want to do nothing on. You want to drive slow, and people just won't do it. But they're still working on it.
Mr. Turner?
Yes, sir. A number of years ago, I'm gonna fight with Ms. Butler real quick. I'm gonna need y'all's support. A number of years ago, we used to have meetings in Big Cypress, Pioneer, Felda, Montsura, and Harlem. We haven't done that in a while. Ms. Butler, would you consider us doing that? It's an off-year election cycle. Nobody can say that we're using this for political. I think that it would be a great process.
Person, I don't mind doing that at all.
Okay.
It used to be my IT department that had to foot the bill for all of it.
Okay.
It's your IT department to
Okay.
foot the bill for it.
Okay.
So it's up to your IT department to set up recording for it.
Okay.
Y'all
Well,
want
Miss-
to do it, don't matter to me.
Mr. Chair, I'd like for us to at least consider it because we haven't done it in quite some time. I think it is nice to bring the meetings to those communities, and I'd like to take it all around the county. And if Ms. Davis, if you would be receptive to it, if the group likes the idea, I think even if it's a few $1,000s, I still think it's money that's very well spent. I'd even like to go a step further of saying I'd like to see us in Clewiston use Main Street subs out at the Harlem Civic Center at bring in Vifo Brady's at Pioneer or something along those lines. Queue up the courthouse for down at Felda. I want to have a little reception type deal, but I really think that we should do something because it would be a good gesture, I think, to our constituents and try to get people to see what's going on.
Okay, I'll speak against this.
Okay.
Okay. I remember driving to the Seminoles, wide open, people coming from Tampa and Sarasota to the Seminoles, and the guy opens the door and lets us in. We're the only people there. There's nobody nobody.
That's because the Seminoles don't like you.
Anyway, nobody was there. I also remember going to Felda. The lady unlocks the door, comes in. We're all there. Y'all same people there. Nobody from Felda's there. So I think we're wasting their time. If they want to come to the meeting, they need to just come to the regular meetings. And Harlem's right down the road. If they want to run up here, they can get the car and run up here and come. And it just shocked me when I go to the Seminoles and there's nobody there, and I go to Felda and there's nobody there. And so, and you go to Pioneer, Mr. Bosley's there.
No, that's not true at all.
Mr. Bosley and a few more.
No, Mr. Bosley and 55 other people were there.
But that, not in Felder, not in,
So
Not
because
those
two
two.
people,
those
okay,
two.
that's fine. You
And
want to
then-
continue to debate? I'll go all night.
Then Harlem's right down here.
Harlem, you could
can
not,
drive right
you
up
could
there.
not put another black person in a chair
Well, that's
in
'cause
Harlem
they
at the
pub-
Civic Center.
They publicized it.
That's the whole process of getting to the government to the people.
Well, they can get in their car, come right up here. sit
You know
down.
what? Sometimes you just said it yourself. You don't like leaving the chambers.
Done.
And I'd like to point out, he didn't drive here tonight, someone else did.
Yeah, he never drives.
Well, anyway, I don't think it's a good idea. And to spend the money, the extra
Oh,
money.
really? Spend the extra money?
Whatever it costs. What did it cost you?
Thousands.
I paid, my IT staff and everything, I had to pay.
Okay. Bunch of money, right?
It wasn't cheap,
Okay. Thank you, Miss Butler.
because we done that more than just once.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Butler.
We used to do it every year. We used to do it every year. We haven't done it in probably 8 years, I'd say. I think it's about right.
I've never done it.
Anybody else got any conversation on that?
I'd love to do it.
I think they doing good down now.
Mr.
Again, I'm probably going, Mr. Harris is going to kick me on the table, but I like the idea of giving the public opportunity to be there.
Well, I did too if they'd show up.
And it doesn't cost that much to set up a sound system. I did it for 30 years. It doesn't cost that much.
What do y'all think about going
So-
back to commission meeting starting at 9 o'clock in the morning in LaBelle at the commission chambers?
I don't like that because most people's working at 9 o'clock in the morning. They can't be there. I like to move it back to 6 o'clock where people get off at 5 o'clock and actually be at a meeting. So,
I would vote for that in a New York second.
I mean, we serve the people, so why not allow them the chance to be there? If we're
Folks
gonna-
get off at 5. Folks get off at 5.
They do.
And
They
I
get
get
off at 5
hammered
o'clock.
because people say, y'all are operating in a vacuum. I have to feed my babies, go home, get dressed. By the time my butt hits that couch to breathe for 30 seconds, I ain't leaving again. And if you would just queue it up at 6 p.m., I would be receptive. The reality is we're not having marathons anymore. I think that our county administrator and staff are coming in here. We're dialing it in,
Yeah.
and we're pulling the trigger. When's the last time we've had a 2-hour meeting?
Last meeting.
Well,
No, hold on, guys. Stop laughing for a second. Seriously. We did not have a 2-hour meeting the last meeting. We did not. We have not had a 2-hour meeting.
It was pretty.
If it is, it's right at it. And there was probably a healthy debate on an issue or two.
So you get out at 8 o'clock.
So you get out at 8 o'clock.
That's twice a month.
You get out at 8 o'clock.
I get out of church at 10 o'clock.
You know how many times I stay past 7:30, 8 o'clock at work? You know how many people do that? I'm just saying, I'm receptive to it. But anyway, I don't think I need to do it in the form of a motion, but I would like for the county administrator to vet that about doing that on the 5 areas that I discussed: Big Cypress, Pioneer, Felda, Montserrat, Harlem, regardless of no people show up and it's just 8 of us. I'm good with it.
The last 2 meetings, one adjourned at 7:33 p.m. and the one before that, 7:28 p.m.
So 2.5 hours is what we're averaging.
Them two.
And I'm probably 45 minutes of that.
We're not less than the majority of it.
I would say an hour and a half of it.
Average. On average, we're probably an hour. Reality, those are longer, but if you go back and look at the minutes, we're average usually an hour. I mean, I've sat in some board meetings that lasted 6 minutes, and I wonder why I wasted my time myself.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're here to serve the public, so.
Yep.
I know
I
y'all
agree.
get mad at me, I'm sorry, but I am part of the public. I pay taxes just like everybody else. I think they should have a voice.
Well, I like to grind, so I enjoy it, and I love details.
The only other
Sometimes
question
don't.
I have, if you're done, Mr. Turner, are
Nope.
you good? You got more?
Yep, 2 things.
Okay.
So you all know we had Miss Bird spoke very eloquently last night at the John Boy Auditorium in reference to it's currently called the Lake Okeechobee LORS, the regulation schedule. We try to manage Lake Okeechobee between 12.5 and 15.5 feet. If it gets into a low water management band or high water management band, they change some of the different protocols. Very long, drawn out discussion. And it was a packed house at the John Boy Auditorium. One of the more busy meetings that we've ever seen. And everybody was there with the concept of trying to let the Corps of Engineers hear our concerns that we don't want to see a 10.5 foot lake be the baseline instead of a 12.5 foot lake. There is a lot of movement from Congressman Brian Mast's office to embrace this process. And as chair of the Lake O Coalition, we meet on a quarterly basis. But it seems like so many times we're preaching to our choir. You know, we were at the John Boy last night, and you know, Raymond Iglesias says something, and everybody claps, and they're all fired up, and woo, slapping them on the back. Ms. Bird says that, and everybody's, you know, in her corner. The entire Perry family, who are one of the biggest agricultural families in our region, spoke, and everybody's 100% in lockstep with what they're saying. But I think, unfortunately, we're speaking in a vacuum. And so what I'm going to request is that we formally reach out to Palm Beach County, Martin County, Okeechobee County, Glades County, and ourselves, and we establish a joint workshop, publicly advertised, along with all of the city commissions within those basins. So it would be Pahokee, South Bay, Belle Glade, Clewiston, Moore-Haven, Okeechobee City as well. And we need to galvanize, because there is strength in those numbers. And I don't know if we host the initial meeting in Okeechobee or we host it in Belle Glade, but we need to do this. And the reason why I'm saying that is because this 10.5-foot lake is garnering a lot of energy, and there's just simply more people than us that are wanting to eliminate the discharges. And so I think that we need to move that discussion down the road. So it's nothing more than, you know, I don't know. And this may be a meeting that happens at 9 in the morning. It may be a meeting that happens at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. And we're going to have to invite the Corps of Engineers. We're going to have to invite FWC. We're going to have to invite a number of different players to the table. I am going to personally reach out to Congressman Brian Mast's office whenever we establish that date, and I'm going to invite him along with a number of other congressional leaders and then both of the senators for the state of Florida. They need to hear us, and and I think we're all going to be on the same page. I think we're all going to be on the same page, but I think the entire lake's going to be on that page, because we've got to protect this water resource. So that's my final thing for the night, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Come on, Matt.
Carson, this morning I was at Glades
Come up, Matthew. Get at the microphone, bud.
State your name.
Matt Howard. I was at the Glades County Commissioners meeting this morning, and they had FWC come in and do a presentation on the spraying of the lake. They also mentioned, Commissioner Stanley, this very same sentiments about the 10.5-foot level. So I'm sure you're going to get plenty of support from Glades County when you reach to them.
I know that Martin County had a same powwow this morning, and they are receptive to this concept as well. I would be reaching out to them on an individual basis, but because of sunshine laws and the LACO coalition that I serve as chair of, I can't, because now it becomes a conflict, because this is something that will become before the LACO coalition. So that's why I'm requesting that we do it on a grander scale, because it's important that you all know all of these details that we're discussing, and it's important that the city of Moore-Haven, the city of Clewiston, and so on and so forth around. Last night we had the mayor of Pahokee there. We had the ex-mayor of the Pahokee. We had the vice mayor of Pahokee there. They're all saying the exact same things, you know.
So next week, some of us, we're going to go in 2 different teams, I understand, to Tallahassee. And next week, we're going to have a small team, the first phase of the team.
Yes, sir.
This is not part of our legislative conversation that we intended originally on having. Does this need to be?
I think it is. I think this is one of those things that it rises to the top of the food chain. It's not our number one ask, but it is definitely a number one priority that we need to make them aware of. Byron Donalds and Kathleen Pasadena are already going to be aware of it, but I think that you know, we need to make it a front burning item.
Okay. I would love to see a short
white paper on it.
Yes, sir.
We can get that for you.
All right, that'd be great by Tuesday of next week.
It's already in existence.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. So,
Can I say something?
Raymond Iglesias, Rolla Martins Marina. That's a great point, Carson, about you guys teaming up and getting something done. But you got to realize that public comment is only through March 31st. So for you guys to get with these other county commissioners and city commissioners, y'all need to do it like she needs to start working on it tomorrow, without fail. It's not just farming; it's tourism. You mentioned Beef O'Brady's a little while. You mentioned the Subway shop. It's going to be devastating for this area with a 10.5-foot lake. And I hate to say it, but the governor has the ear from Brian Mast, and Trump has DeSantis in his corner. So I'm afraid that that's actually going to happen sooner than later. Every indication that I've had as far as talking to the Army Corps yesterday is that may even come about this week. It's not going to be the Losum schedule that we talked about last night, but for the president to come in and say, start pushing it to 10.5 feet by May 1st. Now, to have a drought on Lake Okeechobee from time to time, that's not a bad idea. I mean, it needs it for the health of the lake.
No doubt.
But I can tell you what concerns me is when you force the drought and you mess with Mother Nature, and then you have another drought, I can tell you that the current lure schedule that was based on a 12.5-foot lake in 2000, when they started June 1st at 12.5 feet, we hit a 8.97 lake that year. So if you give the DeSantis and Mass what they want at a 10.5-foot lake permanently, that puts your lake at 6.97. In 2006, we would have had a 6.82 lake. In 2010, would have been a 7.53 lake.
To layman's terms, that means no boat traffic, right?
That means nothing at all. That means
right.
It's not just yachts. It's no bass.
Right.
Bass boats. It's going to be no bass. Right. It's going to be no birds. I mean, it's going to eradicate Lake Okeechobee. Like I said, there's a difference between high and low periods throughout time because Mother Nature, throws it at you. But to force it and keep it at 10.5-foot lake is not even an option. And if we don't speak loudly, like Brian Mass is doing on the coast, we will lose. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, and the other thing too is that 10.5 is an easy thing. It's sexy. It's like send the water south. It's like toxic water sucks. It's like, Big Sugar's the evil doer of all things that are hurting the environment. It's just something that the masses have latched onto, and it's gaining traction. And so I think that we've got to galvanize our numbers. No matter what your political persuasion is, President Trump doesn't concern himself with the facts a lot of times or details associated with implementing policy. And there is no doubt that Governor DeSantis is his boy. And so when that conversation starts to occur, now they're going to dictate to the Secretary of the Army of Corps of Engineers, and I'm telling you, I think that we're going to see movement on this. Not much different than for the first time ever in the history of our state, Governor Scott was able to force the Corps of Engineers to spin on a dime and start emergency protocols of sending water south that they had never done after Irma, when the lake was getting up above right at 17, to protect the integrity of the dike. And they did some things. They held some water north. They did some things that they had never done, and that was because Governor Scott had the ear of President Trump. They were able to move the ball on some of those things. And so you're going to see these types of things occur. And obviously it's easy. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's a ton of more people on the coast than there are us. So when they're trying to avoid those deluges, that's what we're looking at. So thank you.
They already got dates set up for their regular meetings. We wouldn't have to change the date. You go in on one of their meetings, they already have standards set up. They got one on the 26th, the 27th, the 28th. Are
you talking about the Corps?
The Corps. I
have zero, Ms. Bird, no disrespect. I have zero desire to go to that dog and pony show again. That's a process that they're doing. What I'm saying is that the movement that I'm talking about asking us to engage is in excess of. We know that these LOSUM,
and I understand
those
that,
schedules are going to still
about
occur.
The time, because of the time frame.
It's 2022 is when they're wanting implementation. What I'm saying is that we have to get our group to get a Dr. Paul Gray, who's going to be able to speak from a scientific base about the fact that if you remove the littoral zone, the 0 to 18 inches of water, and you have Ray Ann Wessel with the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Fund, who's all about every time you turn around, we need more littoral zone, we need more snail kite habitat, we need more wood stork habitat. You won't have any of that. You will be able to run a whole bunch of cows out there on the 730 square miles that are comprised of Lake Okeechobee right now, but you will have evaporation transfer. When the lake gets to like 10 feet, the amount of water that we lose on a daily basis from a high pressure day with a lot of wind, it'll blow your mind. It's like a giant mud puddle that just goes away in a second. And so what I'm talking about doing is a long-term game. This is not we're going to switch something tomorrow and we're going to do that. I'm talking about creating a conversation that never has occurred in my knowledge. I don't know if the lake area has galvanized like this. And we start talking about a long-term approach and controlling this conversation a little bit more to make sure that our voice is heard. And it's a long game. It's a long game, making sure that everybody understands we're all singing from the same sheet of music. And you have to take us all into consideration if you're talking about lowering the lake level, because we are working together on this. So,
anyone else? One last question. We'll get out of here. I'll get you out of here in 2 minutes.
Perfect.
The last question is for you, Shane, and I know you get tired of hearing this question, but can you give me an idea when they might actually start the paving of 14 Road? That's one of the other roads I'm getting beat up on a lot.
Okay.
Tommy's complaining every day.
I know. Well, he's getting that bus stop in front of his house, so.
Well, he had the chickens too, but I wasn't gonna put that out there. But
Yep. We have a a pre-construction meeting scheduled. I believe it's next week. I don't have the exact date. Probably going to start in March, but we're going to know more when we have our pre-construction meeting. That's where the CEI and the contractor all meet, and we establish our day we're going to start, because they have to gear up. We've already had our pre-CEI service. I'm sorry, that was 8:46. We had a pre-CEI services meeting, but anticipate starting in March.
That's the last step, right?
That's the last step. We issue that. From there, we'll know when we're going to issue the notice to proceed. We'll issue at that meeting. So.
okay, that's all I've got too. So thank you very much. Appreciate you, everyone. Anybody got anything else? Meeting adjourned.